Welcome to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast with Darren Mitchell. If you're a sales leader looking to take your leadership to a whole new level, then this is the podcast for you. We'll be exploring tips, techniques, and strategies to help you take your leadership to the exceptional level and allow you to enjoy more money, more meaning, and better sales results. Welcome to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast. And today's a very interesting day because this is the first time that I've had two guests on the podcast. And it's an absolute pleasure to welcome Mike Latch and Gregg Murphy from Pattern Intelligence all the way in the US. Welcome, guys. How are you?
Great to be here, Darren.
Yes. Thanks for welcoming us, Darren.
It's as I said before we press record, first time. This is I've done over 700 episodes, and this is the first time I've had two people. So I feel like one of those late night TV hosts that are going to have to sort of play yin and yang in relation to the conversation. But very much looking forward to this, guys. You've got a pretty interesting history and a big history of success in tech and in solar. Mike and Greg, you run an organization called Pattern Intelligence, and you are the co-authors of, has it been released yet or soon to be released book?
Coming out in September.
Nice.
Not released yet. And
I'd love to talk about that, particularly the I guess the thought process behind the title, Sales Sucks.
It's a throwback to Greg was my very first sales manager, my very first sales job. It was working for Greg. So that's kind of a fun story. And before that, I thought sales sucked, like a lot of like engineers and scientists and stuff like that. So
sensational.
That's where the name came.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So for the purposes of the listeners, you guys gave me a bit of a heads up before we press record, and that Mike, you're the technological guru, if you like, that likes building on the tech, and Greg, you're the person who has all the human elements, the scripting, the development side, and you actually, hopefully I don't quote you out of line here. You actually said when you take two of you and put you together, you've got a pretty good human being.
Greg is a good human all on his own. I'm the one that I have a lot of statistically rare characteristics.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, guys, really looking forward to delving into this. I want to talk about sales, your perception of sales, but also how technology, particularly in the world of AI now, and it's just going to be more and more taking over the world, if you like, and hopefully as an enabler rather than a like what's the movie Terminator?
Yeah,
Skynet. Hopefully Skynet.
Yeah, Skynet. Right.
Yeah,
no
hopefully Skynet doesn't destroy us all. It's
that should be a logo. No Skynet.
Could be. So before we jump in, love to just get a bit of background from you in terms of your history in terms of sales. Mike, you said before that you had a thought process that sales sucked years ago, and Greg was your first sales manager. So yeah. I'd love to get a bit of context from the guest in terms of a little bit of background in terms of what then led you to do what you do today, because that then becomes a platform for a really interesting deep dive.
Yeah, sure. I'll go first. In no particular order, me. So I have a less common background for being good in sales, and that I started my career working for a defense contractor as like a physicist, R&D engineer, that sort of field. And early on, folks that were successful in that business were like retired, military officers and things like that. So I got lucky that they recognized some characteristics that I had that were useful in leadership. So I got some really great leadership grooming early on, but also got exposed to like project management and all this kind of stuff. And people would throw in jibes like, you should be doing sales, you can be running this place. What? And I was like, what's wrong with me that people think I would be good at sales? Because like both grandfathers are engineers, a lot of engineers are like, why does sales and marketing even exist?
Yeah.
So, long story short, I ended up where I went to graduate school or some graduate school in Hawaii. I started working for this residential solar company where Greg worked. And they said, I met the owners and they said, Mike, we don't really need anybody like you, but you could do sales or something. And they kind of told Greg will tell this other part of the story. So they just sort of forced me on Greg to like join his next sales training cohort. And he turned me into a selling machine within like 6 weeks, I was their top rep in like every measurable, like in everything that we measured, from like not giving discounts to one call closes, conversion rates. And it was because Gregg had this really great process that really worked. And he was like, Mike, don't talk about how solar panels work all the time. You know, I've got a really great way to explain things. Just follow it. And I'm pretty coachable. And had I not gone through that experience, it was a, you know, commission only sales job. I'd never done it. And had I not gone through that experience and met Gregg, I would not now realize that there's a very, very straightforward way to scale and execute sales that's like super ethical, and you sleep good at night and just help people make decisions in their own best interest. But I had this technical background and this project management background that kind of I naturally think around growth and scaling. And I was like, hey, there's a lot of stuff I'm doing that really software should be doing. The reason I got so good so fast is because I could handle a lot of edge cases right there on the fly. And I have kind of like a teaching type personality. And so I would explain what I was doing as I would recreate things from scratch if that's what needed to happen in the home. But a lot of that stuff software should have been doing. So as I was helping other, you know, reps and do what I was doing, that's how I got and then pretty soon, after a few months of sales, they asked if I would get back into tech, building software for their kind of grand scheme plans. That's how I originally got into doing sales enablement software for strategic sales. You know, started with solar. Anyway, that's my background. That's how I ended up with getting into sales enablement tech for sales teams.
Awesome. Now, before I go to Gregg, I'd love to just ask you a couple of questions on that, because often you mentioned you became one of the best salespeople in about 6 weeks. How much of your
the best?
Sorry, the best.
Yeah, I got the truck. I got the wrap truck. Yeah, I was the top. I became the top rep. What's a funny story is that dealer was a really successful residential solar company at the time. This is back in end of 2010, beginning 2011. And they were like the dealer of the year for the largest panel manufacturer at the time.
Yeah.
That company, I think, is going through bankruptcy now. It's been a while. But so randomly, I was like the top rep for like a really big panel manufacturer in like North America, you know, a couple months after starting my first sales job. It was kind of funny. And the owners are like, how did you get so good so fast? I'm like, I literally am doing exactly what Gregg is telling me to do. So it's just this really neat kind of cemented us all into a bunch of, you know, virtuous cycle stuff.
Well, because I was going to ask you how much of it was you being like it's because you say you're an extrovert now, but were you an extrovert back then, being a physicist, a tech guy? You were?
Yeah, I have a very atypical personality type for somebody that, you know, was a strong R&D researcher and stuff like that.
Yeah, because it says to me that you were able to follow a process and just trust the process and trust the system, which unfortunately a lot of salespeople say, no, I'm not going to worry about that system. I've got my own system that's been working, so I'm just going to, despite what you tell me, Gregg,
Gregg
my own process.
Yeah, one funny thing was Gregg would march me out in all subsequent sales rep training classes, and he'd be like, Mike's literally got degrees in physics and electrical engineering. You know, he's like, he stuck to the process. So you should, you know, he's a clever guy. You're probably clever, but so I was a total empty glass of water. It was like you know, I was really, really lucky that I met Gregg, and that was my first experience in sales. And he had a good process for me to learn and execute.
Love it. Because there's an element there of mentorship that I'd like to delve into. But before we do that, Gregg, sounds like you've been built up a bit there, my friend.
You know, I got a different way of seeing that situation, Mike. I don't know, man. It's no, I'd say that Mike
first day.
We have this joke that I fired Mike on his first day, and it is partially a joke. But when I met him, again, if you were to listen and talk to Mike on the phone and close your eyes and not see his arms, he almost sounds a little bit cyborish and cyborgish. Is that about right, Mike?
That's cyborgish.
Sometimes. So Darren, oftentimes when I think there is a higher than normal likelihood for misinterpretation, I get into a very, very accurate word mode. right? I
Robotic.
sort of slow down. I try to choose every word carefully. And
Yeah.
it comes from my days in R&D where you'd see two people talking and you knew a miscommunication was happening in real time and it was going to cause all these problems down the road. And so it can sound very robotic sometimes. Like,
So I got Mike on that day, right? And
yeah,
so Mike, yeah, positions filled, and then Mike was, of course, as he started to talk and walk me through it, one of the things he says, I'll do what you asked me to do. I'm smart, and and I appreciate that. And so he came in, and we developed this process that's we call it selling with aloha, so that homeowners feel heard, understood, and listened to. It's really important that they feel those ways. And Mike came in and he just crushed it. And so that's really kind of a premise of like some of the best scripts that you could possibly have. A lot of folks get freaked out when they talk about script selling and those types of
Yeah.
things. And we akin it to a movie. You can remember, Tom Cruise in Top Gun, and you can recite what happened in that movie because it was like real time. He was the character, but he was
Yeah.
following a script and he owned it. His personal character came out, his personality came out.
Mm.
And that's really good scripting enables that with people to do that. But there are ways that we can communicate actionable items that help people make decisions. And once you've dissected every word, it's been in for so long, we know what works and what doesn't work. And so Mike really came in and he excelled at that by listening and taking on. And people who have had 10, 15, 20-year sales experience, he just blew right by them. Top closing ratios, those types of things. And they always ask why. And so that's where I really found it's like we create a lot of good practices and policies. And then again, he jumped into tech, and boy, we just kind of blew the business up after that. And we've done it now a couple of times. So
yeah.
we like to talk about.
In a nutshell, where we overlapped in our Venn diagram is that Gregg exposed me to the idea that like you can really just break down concepts for people and walk people through purchasing decisions and feel no discordance internally between what you're doing with a customer and your own sales objectives.
Yeah.
I had never been exposed to that. And so it just so happens that it works with most humans because it's a very authentic thing to do. You're genuinely trying to help someone make a decision in their own best interest. And then where I pushed Gregg's boundaries is that all those interactions, all those difficult to explain concepts, all those maybe more challenging objections that only a small percentage of the sales population could do very well, I pushed his boundaries on features to create in software that could allow more sales reps to do a better job at more of those challenging interactions and objections and things like that. So that's really where the novel tech came into play and like between Gregg and I.
Nice. And we'll talk about the tech and how you've created. Sorry, say that again, Mike.
I said, did that make sense around the trying to use software to help more of the interactions than just training?
Absolutely, because there's a lot of organizations that are very tech enabled, but the question is, are the people within the organization up to speed with the ability to use the tech to its fullest potential?
Yeah. Or is it just software to keep track of people, and really help the sales rep sell? Whereas like I would disengage from sales leadership meetings and go and have pretty challenging conversations with my tech team, especially, as it got group, the last company was around 5,000 people or so, a few hundred people in the tech department. And it was like this has to help this human sales rep make this point. Right? If it doesn't do that, we need to try harder. Like it's not click a bunch of buttons and go here and go there. Like that's not good enough. And you end up with stuff that genuinely helps people. We could take people off the street, give them a few weeks of training, and they could sell pretty complicated products, like, pretty well. Like normally it would take a year and a half for somebody to get that good. So
yeah, absolutely. Now there was one thing you were mentioning underneath that during the whole conversation, and there was a word called ethics. Now, when you talk ethics and sales, most people, and I'm talking the general population here, probably don't marry up those two words and
Yeah.
say there's a correlation here, right? What are you talking about? Salesperson, ethical? That's
Right.
really interesting. Your take on that, because coming from a technical background, not necessarily having, I guess, the training in sales, did you have any preconceived ideas? Because you said earlier that thought sales sucked, and that was the genesis of the book that you eventually wrote. But just talk to me, and Greg as well, about your thoughts around ethics, and particularly in a solar industry where it's business to consumer. How important is ethics? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people that would throw up as many objections as possible and think, well, oh, this person's just coming in to try and flog me some solar panels. Do I really need this? Just talk to me a little bit about the importance from your perspective of ethics, and has that been like an underlying foundation in terms of what you've done for your business?
You want to go first, Greg, or
Yeah,
you want me?
so, Mike, I'd really like you to hit on in a minute though on how tech really helps keep people in the tracks from that standpoint. But we come from that standpoint. You hear me mention, the term that we sell with Aloha, and a
Yeah.
lot of folks who have been they feel manipulated by salespeople, and for good reason. There's weird terms out there. You may have heard buyers are liars and all these we just like horrible ways that many sales organizations approach or perceive the customer. And a lot of times the reason why is because the homeowner, or even if you're a business owner, B2C, it doesn't matter. It's like you have a need, and can your product fill that need or not? And can you do it without all the stuff? And just like, can we just see if we can meet somewhere in the middle and help me make a decision? And so often homeowners or business owners are on their back heels. They're not being fully truthful because they think they're being manipulated.
Yeah.
And so what we found is just by simply showing people, folks, this is how we can help you. This is how our product can help serve you, and showing them kind of that cost benefit early on, as
Mm.
opposed to like, I'm going to throw up about my company. I'm going to tell you how amazing we are, because they don't care. Show me first how you're going to help me, and then and if I like that, perhaps you've earned the right. Now, I can share with you a little bit about my company and why you might want to consider working with us.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that Mike has done, Mike, I'll speak on it from a sales side, but we've had our last company that Mike and I were part of. We grew it. Gosh, he started. They're at about 30 million. Brought me on, and we ended up, gosh, in about 5 years, we're at $1 billion run rate in sales. 1,000 salespeople, down from 300 to 1,000. So we expanded quickly, and we did it ethically.
Mm.
And the way that Mike was able to do that is, instead of having a sales rep, talk about what they think a customer should see, the sales enablement tool, the sales process, actually kept them on point, had some key topics for them to talk about where the customer could visually make decisions right on the spot. And it really helped keep and protect them there. And now we've got some neat things where we really feel like AI is going to play even a better role in that.
Mm.
So in that part, to help keep people, help inform managers how to better coach and make people exceptional salespeople.
Yeah.
So Mike, why don't you hit on that ethical side from tech?
Yeah. So some there's what Greg and I know mostly, or certainly what I know mostly, is strategic sales, which probably doesn't always have the same definition, but basically anytime when you're selling something where it's like worth it to spend half hour, an hour, like heavily configuring something for somebody, as opposed to, buying some off the shelf. So that's what I mean by strategic sales. And that means that you're selling something that's inherently complicated, lots of options, configurations. And so there's a lot of motivations to sort of come to the selling experience with pre-configured, pre-designed options to sell.
Mm.
Because it's so difficult to get a human sales rep to do a high quality job of walking somebody through all these different complicated decisions and configurations and options and dependencies and all that kind of stuff, right? It can take years And so in strategic sales, there's a lot of motivations to try to show up to the kitchen, I'll use solar or home service, show up at the kitchen table with something designed ahead of time, and then explain why it's designed or configured the way that it is. Oh, you shouldn't get that. I designed your kitchen cabinetry this way for this reason. And a lot of the reason is because it took me a day to get the quote from my own team. And so if I show you all the options, I got to go back and all this kind of stuff, right? So it's very easy for a discordant state to happen between the sales rep, right? For the sales rep to genuinely no longer believe that they're aligned with the customer because they're trying to now get the customer to buy what they've spent all this work designing for them.
Yeah.
And so so that's just one example of where it's easy for ethics to get introduced into an area of at least strategic sales. So a sales rep's self-perceived discordance between what they're offering and what they really think they should be offering or telling the customer. And so that's an example of a place where tech can like really help, because if very sales-minded tech folks are carefully working with sales leaders to create experiences, they can come up with new ways to navigate through those options in a way the customer will understand, and give the customer those options, right? And stay in a very self-experienced moral state, right? So rather than or using solar as an example, you could do all this work, design a system, show up at their house and say, hey, I designed this system with 27 panels for these 3 reasons. And isn't that great? And then you find out, their grandmother's going to be moving out pretty soon. Or I think they're going to, they're probably going to get an electric car pretty soon. And all of a sudden do I want to bring that topic up? Right? Like that happens in the sales rep. Like if I do, can I do it in a way that doesn't derail everything? Is it going to take us down rabbit holes? All that kind of stuff. But tech can really help there.
Yeah.
Like create a carefully designed experience where they can ask those questions and the software still ends up with properly designed systems. So anyways, that's just one example of a way that you can really leverage technology if you do it right. So like, if you have 100 sales reps or 1,000 sales reps, you got 1,000 people in 2,000 appointments that day, and 30% of them, that rep felt a lot better about what they were doing. They weren't hiding something from somebody. So
because it gives them, I guess, information and data from which to consult, because a lot of people, particularly customers, will be looking for an element of proof or something that it's not just going to be from the salesperson. Hey, believe me, this is going to be good for you. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. It's case of no.
That's right.
Here's the configuration. This is what it's going to deliver, because ultimately what selling is, I'd be interested in your take on this, is solving problems. So if there's a problem that a customer has, my job is to figure out, is that problem something they need to solve or want to solve? And if they do, then if I can articulate that, they probably think that I've got a solution for that. So I'll be doing them a disservice if I didn't share that.
Right.
So by having the software, you've now got some data points that you can share with them to say, here's the configuration. You're going to buy an electric car. Grandmothers were leaving the house. They don't need as many panels, etc., etc. So you're now consulting versus convincing.
You're dead on. And it's like even the way that we approach the development of the scripts and the processes, we focus. You have in most sales teams, I would argue all sales teams, you have top performers. These folks, super confident, competent people. They walk with the swagger, and it's impressive to see them do what they do, right? And then you have your mid, and they're a small part, maybe only 10%. If you're lucky, 10%, that's great, right? And then you have mostly like that 80%, that mid performers, and then you have the lower performers, usually like 20% of the team there.
Yeah.
And we found that focusing scripts and practices in software around that mid class, mid performer, if I can get 80% of my sales team to get one more sale a week or a month, you change the game. And so
Yeah.
that's where we really focus on that mid-level. How do I take somebody that's not super confident and maybe not as smart as the top performer, right? And make them like perform like a top performer without the swagger. And so
Without the swagger.
and because a lot of companies try to make everybody emulate that top performing rep, right? And that's why I would bring Mike out to people, because Mike wasn't to talk to the sales team. He wasn't a typical salesperson out there that people would see. And I had other people that were really high performers, but they didn't follow the process in the script that well because they didn't need to, because people wanted to buy from them. They just had that energy, you know what I'm talking about? And so that's where, if we can help those mid performers pick it up just one or two more sales, man, you'll change. And that's what we focused on. We talk about some of that. We go into depth about that in our book a little bit, and then it's what we do in business today, and it's a blast to do that.
If you really want to get to a large size, company or large sales team, there's, growth is inherently challenging, and there's all kinds of problems that you have to solve as you're growing. But if you create a larger percentage of the general population, if you make it such that a larger percentage of the population you can successfully build your organization on top of, that makes it considerably easier to grow. And it's just a coincidence, we think, that people don't expect enough from the software and tech teams that are trying to help their sales teams. Like you see software that helps them keep track of things. You see software that, helps create a static presentation with marketing teams, collateral, all this kind of stuff. But if you take concepts from other parts of sales and marketing, like conversion rate optimization concepts, and you say, well, what is a strategic sale? It's a human with a fair amount of knowledge that's interacting with another human, the buyer. And how can we do conversion rate optimization on that interaction? And when you take that outlook and you say, okay, well, what really is happening is there's 20 or 50 or 60, whatever topics that need to be brought up and conveyed in a way that the listener understands. And each one of those topics can be optimized to be understood. And how can software optimize each one of those? And then maybe you can fit more topics into that, 40 or 50-minute window or something like that. And so we just ended up, there's no magic sauce. We're not like, rocket scientists or took a special pill or something. We just by coincidence, we have a much higher expectation of how much software really should be helping that person-to-person interaction. And when you have that outlook, you just end up with very different tech. And that was why we, when we sold the last company, I thought it was like a $850 or $870 million sale, something like that. I owned a little bit less than 1% by the time we sold the company. So I thought, maybe I'm retiring now. I don't need a lot, and that's more than I need. And then after a while, this like urge to create that tech so other companies could build what we built without having to build it from scratch, like kind of came about. So that's it's a unique outlook right now, but I don't think it will be once more people start to expect more from their software for the sales team.
And is that then the genesis of Patter AI?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Nice. Basically, Patter came about because I always had to build these things from scratch. I had to hire engineers and hire product managers and like teach them stuff that Gregg taught me and somehow get this amalgamation of sales knowledge, engineers building products. Like, gosh darn it, it needs to be one button to get through this, like a sales rep getting 9 things right is a win out of 10. Like don't penalize them for the one thing they didn't get right because they didn't get the right picture or the right checkbox in the document. Like it needs to help more than that.
Yeah.
And so Powder came about to basically create a platform that large companies could then rapidly configure to create the kind of things that we had to create from scratch.
Love it. And Greg, as you were talking about the top performers, the exceptional people up the top that have been doing it forever, and you got the core performers that we can really make a change in the organization to really get some flow on, and then the bottom performers. It sounds to me like the software or the enablement that you create is to build a level of consistency that irrespective of the person, they can trust the process and give them confidence that they've got information there to draw upon to then increase their ability to be a servant to their client to help them make a better educated decision. So it should shorten the sales cycle,
Yep.
but also increase the level of confidence that customers have in the services being provided to them.
Yeah. No, Darren, it's 100% what it's about. And it's, as we break down those, again, your mid performers and your bottom performers, a lot of companies create policies and managers. I'll speak specifically to the sales managers out there, the sales leaders. They spend so much time on people that are not coachable.
Mm.
They don't listen to what you say to do, right? When you've got a proven process that works, the tech supporting you, it's like, man, run the play. It works. If you do this, this, and this, I promise you success. We have that confidence. Like, I'm telling you, go out and do it, right? And if they say, well, show it, right? We could take, anybody who's humble off the street who has a desire to grow and turn them to selling machines in a very short period of time. But sadly, a lot of folks, a lot of sales organizations are focusing on that bottom 20%.
Yeah.
Just spinning their wheels with them. And so our focus is hire and fire at maximum speed.
Yeah.
In other words, you're gonna optimal.
You need a new saying for that to get the gist.
I know it sounds so
it's
horrible.
Good you're here to explain it right now, though, so that's good.
Because it sounds awful, but as you bring people in and you've got the tech and you can closely measure people, you know if they're following process or not.
Mm.
If they're not following process, constantly arguing against the processes that you've got in place, man, they're not your people. And what I'm saying is that there's somebody else there that is your person that's out there that needs to come into that organization, and that person's robbing their space.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what I mean, is we're missing opportunities for people that need to be there. So that's why when you've got the tech, you've got the scripting in place, measure them quickly, support the heck out of them, and then move them on if they're not coachable, and then focus on that 80%. That 80% is what needs you. They need your attention. They need your time.
Well, it's really interesting, isn't it, that Greg, often, and back when I was a sales leader, I would have, the 80-20 rule would always play out in the sales team. And funnily enough, my sales general manager was always say, hey, you need to spend more time with the low performers to get them up to scratch. And I said, no, if I spend more time with those guys, I'll be spending less time with the guys that are actually generating the revenue, which means they're thinking, well, I'm not getting any love from my sales leader. So potentially my performance is going to plateau and potentially, go down. So don't do that. So as I like the terminology, hire and fire with speed. So get them on, and you've got to be almost ruthless with this to say, you know what, if you're not up to it, that's fine. We're going to help you find another role somewhere else, but we've got to move on because the future of this business and the customers we serve is far too important to stuff this up.
Right. We have something that works. One of the things that Greg would do, talking about the middle performers and orienting your tech towards middle performers, the reason that we did that was because that's how we could make the biggest difference, right? Like growth is all about percentage differences as opposed to absolute, it doesn't matter if you got 1 or 10 more sales. It matters what were your sales before and what are your sales later, right? As a percentage. And I was a top rep. I compensated for whatever tech that I had to work around, right? Yeah. And we would introduce a new product and I would learn it quickly. And if I didn't get good training on the new product, I could, I'd figure it out. Top reps do that. They compensate already for what they've got. And what Gregg would do, so them, it's more coaching with top reps, right? Keeping them in good mood and, good mind space. And what Gregg would do, so when we would, a straightforward way to really compete well is this whole idea of getting everybody selling in a consistent manner and getting the right tech people to really facilitate that process that you want delivered. Once you have that, or once you've adopted that as like a good path forward, then it's like, okay, what are the tech people actually doing? And it's just taking a bunch of the topics that get brought up and making it easier to deliver those topics in the sales call, easier to deliver, deal with challenging objections. Well, your price seems pretty high. It doesn't seem like technology would really help that much with that conversation, but it can. We came with all kinds of interactions where you would hit the reconfigure button with a less expensive option, and now it's more similar to what your competitor quote was.
Yeah.
But you're going to lose out on these things. Oh, if I'm going to lose out on these things, I'd rather have the more expensive. Okay, I'll push the magic button, and it goes all back the way that it was. And now I'm happy to pay more than I was going to pay with your competitor. So there's a million examples like that, and that really helps those middle performers, right? If there's 50 interactions, and on average, they do 30 of them well, and that's what makes them a middle performer. And you can make them do 37 of them well, or 41 of them well. It makes them, that's what Gregg's talking about, another sale or two every month from the middle performers. But then how do you keep the high performers not from feeling like they're not getting any of the love? And you would work with them and you would say, hey, what is a great way that you have to explain this? Or how do you deal with this objection? Like, dude, that's awesome. And then sometimes what they tell you isn't replicable at all. They're a super high energy, super charismatic, sell ice to in the snowstorm sort of person. Great. Thank you for showing. But the other times things are very repeatable. That's a great script for asking for referrals. We should incorporate that across, you give them their props, you thank them, they get, so it's really neat. You can do all the right stuff with the top people, but you actually deliver the big differences to your business, because if you build tech for the top people, they're not really going to sell anymore. They're just, life might be a little bit easier, but middle performers, you really can help.
Absolutely. And it sounds like the tech that you've built, and I'd be interested in with pattern intelligence as well, that it's almost real time. So it's a tool. It's something that a sales rep has available to them on their tablet, laptop, whatever device they use, that can be an enabler and a support mechanism for them in real time that enables them to then have a better conversation with that particular customer. So, Mike, as you said, hey, I reckon you're too expensive. Going to the tablet, doing some reconfiguration and say, well, we can get to this quote, but you're going to miss out on these sort of features. Is that what you're looking for? Does this solve the problem? Is this more in line with what you think? Oh, no, that's not what I want. So it's real time. Now, for people listening to this, many organizations will have different sales processes, right? They'll have different sales methodologies. They'll have Challenger, Miller Heiman, all these different things. They're thinking to themselves, I don't need more software. What objection do you have when you've got organizations that are saying, hey, we've got this software enablement tool, we've got this sales methodology process in place. How does your software, how does your enablement tools counter that? Because it sounds to me like this is sales process agnostic.
Yeah, so good question. So our company, Pattern Intelligence Corporation is the legal name, but we usually call it Pattern AI, because our first app that we launched was like a co-pilot and in-home co-pilot app. But we're building our platform, and we're just going to market now. And the way that the only way I've actually ever been able to successfully get people to get what we're talking about is to pretend to sell something with software that I've written. And that's when they have these little aha moments, because I'll go through like complicated like parts of the sale, and they're watching the software like very, very tightly coupled, like with what I'm saying and what I'm doing and presenting an option. And they're like, oh yeah, I would like that. And then I might break the fourth wall. I might be like, look, you probably think I should just ask for all this data ahead of time. But there's a few things I'm actually not going to do ahead of time. I'm going to ask it of you when we're sitting together, because it's critical that you know where this data came from for every piece that's going to come for the next 30 minutes.
Mm.
So that's the only way we've been able to successfully get somebody to realize there's way more that software could be doing for them.
Yeah.
Is to pretend to sell with software that's highly coupled with the sales process. The part of the reason that we wrote the book was because, you know, as an exec and at other companies that I started, I've only started one other company from scratch, and I'm on my fourth company but second one I started from scratch. Is I've over the years, Greg and I have explained this stuff. Like, why are you guys, why, you know, the last company, Sunpro, why is Sunpro so successful?
Yeah.
Right. And it was straightforward for us to point to, like, we have tech that's different, and it really helps our sales team. We can take somebody off the street and train them up pretty quickly, and it really helps. And we would have all these explanations over the years. So I'm wordy, and nobody really got it until we would pretend to sell whatever our product was with the system, and then be like, oh, okay. And so the part of the reason of the book was like, hey, we've explained this so many times, and we're relatively intelligent and pretty articulate, but it's still like, no matter what we say, people walk away. So it's like a PowerPoint presentation with slides magically when you need it. Like, no. And we give all these examples, and they're like, we're going to write a book. And so they're challenging topics, and we're wrestling with it ourselves on how to really explain to people without them having to live it firsthand.
Well, it sounds like it's proof of concept, and the best way to get somebody to buy into a concept is to see it actually happening
So
and
far,
apply
right.
it to their own, I guess, situation. Because you could sit there as a salesperson and say, "Oh, we've got this fantastic feature. We'll do this, and we'll solve this problem." And it's like,
Yes.
believe me, I'm a trusted sales guy, right? But
Right.
until they see it,
Much hand waving, right?
that's it. Bit of sleight of hand here and there.
Yeah.
But until there's a proof of concept, most people don't get it, because most people need to have some sort of tangible convincing mechanism to say, "Oh, this, I now see this," right? Once they do, and I'm interested in your take on this from the previous organizations, I'm sure that once people started to use the enablement software and they started to see the results, and you talk about being able to take a salesperson off the street and turn them into an exceptional salesperson within a reasonably short period of time with the software enablement, they would be almost like raving fans as to what it can provide them.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happened. So when we sold the last company and we were launching the Copilot app, because we thought it would be easier than this very sophisticated platform that, you know, is kind of, it's cerebral, right? Like, hey, it can be rapidly configured to adapt to the way that you sell, and rapidly configured on an ongoing basis, because every good sales process has to evolve to stay good. And that's not meaty enough, right? And so we knew creating this platform would take quite a bit of time. So we launched the Copilot app first, but at the same time, large, you know, folks from our industry were like, hey, are you going to build something like you built before? Because people that have lived it get it, and now they expect more.
Yeah.
And so, you know, then we were like, okay, we need to get this platform out as soon as we can. And that, you know, now we're like heads down trying to finish the platform. But so right now, that, like, really, it's the people that worked with us and lived it.
Yeah.
That now there's this, you know, now there's like, you know, a few hundred people, you know, there was maybe 100 managers that worked under Greg. And so those are a captive audience, right? They're like, I don't, you know, Mike and Greg know this stuff, but we don't, you know, it's hard to explain, right? And when you have to go through the process to end up with this highly configured thing, it's hard to explain in advance what it is that you're going to get.
Yeah.
And so we're figuring that stuff out now.
Nice.
And yeah.
Nice. And in terms of the book, because sales suck, I love to know the genesis of the title, but is the purpose of the book to help, I guess, educate the marketplace as a bit of a pull through for the work that you're now doing? Does it sort of complement that?
Yeah, it is. And we wanted to share a lot of it's our story about how we took Mike and I had different start times. Mike was 5 years with the firm, had brought his own company in and built this software, and he just literally was just changing the world. And then brought me in because we wanted to go public. And about that time when they brought me in, Mike built it up to, gosh, about 300 some reps, about $350 million in sales. And in a couple of years, we took it to 1,000 reps and a $1 billion run rate in sales. So we would like to share the story of how we did that. How were we able to get people to perform at such a high level from 0 to 60 in literally just a couple of weeks, right?
Yeah.
We just had them out there running really hard. So we like to tell that story, and the idea where we say like sales sucks. Mike's adage is you've heard it, and mine is that it's for the manager out there is go, man, sales sucks. We gotta pick up our game. The CEOs, come on, man, sales sucks. How do we make it better? And we've got our process that we go into. Some of what we even shared here on the podcast are good for a booming market and for a challenging market. They're processes that work across the board, as we talked about, focusing then on your middle class people and the reps, and tech enablement that literally helps customers make decisions on the spot. Most tech tools out there don't do that. They'll show information, but where's the decision? And we really help people make decisions in a way that they can make a 40, 50, $100,000 decision within a 45-minute time frame. And you've got to have a real compelling story that can share it quickly and communicate it. And then one of the pieces of the tech, imagine being able to have a sales manager on every single sales call. What
a good sales manager.
Good sales manager.
Yeah, on every call, they would be able to pick up on what's happening. That's what we do. Imagine having the legal staff. Oh my gosh, make sure they're staying on compliance. That's what we do. Imagine having your engineers. Are we designing it correctly, right? So all of that is in play from the CFO standpoint, and that's something that it's actually never been developed. That's what we talk about. We built this thing before, but now we're adding more features to it. It's exciting, and to see what we're gonna build off this.
Nice.
Yeah. And the purpose of the book was just like, I genuinely believe what we were doing at the last company isn't done much more often at companies, just because people haven't been. It's just a coincidence that I got exposed to Gregg.
Yeah.
Had I not, I wouldn't have this knowledge that I do. I have a lot of confidence that in a straightforward manner, you can scale a strategic sales team in a very predictable way. And the book is there just to, probably most of the information in the book will also be on websites. We're not trying to make a bunch of money off the book or something like that. It's just genuinely like, look, here's like, here's step by step how to like put all the scripts in place, how to build scripts. Like if you've never been exposed to that stuff, here you go. That there's other places to find that kind of information, but here's one central location if this is also helpful for you. By the way, if you do believe in trying to have a consistent in-person sales process across your 100, across your 1,000 people, here's a very straightforward way to start building technology to get more performance than you probably think is realistic to get. And so that's what the book is about. It's like a whole half of the book is like all about like how to hire the engineers and product managers and how to build the tech and what kind of thought process they should go through. Because that's like, it's super weird to have a human like me that like really gets sales and also is pretty comfortable building software products and stuff like that. Usually you get software people that like, that just don't really get it right. Either they get bossed around in the company and the people are like, you can't really help me, just build this. And they don't really know how to do something better. And then you end up with more mediocre crap,
Well, they get pigeonholed and say, no, you're not a salesperson. You're a tech geek. So stay in your corner, mate.
Yeah. Do what I say. Yeah. Do it like this. Just make it like this. And if you could have opened that person's eyes, like there's so much more for that amount of effort, you could get something that's so much more helpful to your business.
Yeah.
So that was why we wrote the book. and then figuring in the long run, it would help us, with recruiting or, future clients, who knows, but hopefully the book is helpful, right? I mean,
you said before, Mike, that the information in the book is probably readily available from different sources, but to be able to put it into one spot and to have almost like a blueprint that people can follow, organizations can follow, to bring some certainty to their own sales process that's going to help them maybe onboarding the right people, having the right sort of scripts in place, just dialing in on why we're here, what's the service we're providing, what's the problem we're trying to solve, can help that organization become better servants to their marketplace, which should elevate their profile within that particular marketplace, which should lead to better sales.
And hopefully, I was just going to say, and hopefully some of the people that are reluctant when they think about script or process-based sales, hopefully it's a good enough case that helps win some of them over, right? Just like a great movie doesn't feel inauthentic because somebody practiced it a bunch. It's actually the most authentic appearing or experience that you can go through, other than like something, in real life. And it's because somebody thought long and hard about what information is going to get delivered, and they practiced delivering it. It's actually, it's nothing not authentic about it. It's like, how much more respectful of somebody's time can you be than to think long and hard about what should be said when you're with them and practice it, like, 100%. So, some of the book is about that, to help people overcome. Because once you build a bunch of consistency across a business process, you can start borrowing theories from all kinds of other, but you can start borrowing manufacturing methodologies and manufacturing theory, and putting quality control processes in place, and it just you can scale so much more efficiently, or you can be more efficient. If you're not trying to scale, if you're not trying to grow like crazy, you can also attack efficiencies, right? You say, hey, we're going to drive profits up, and we're going to do it by constantly iterating on this key part of our business, which is, the sales process.
Yeah, love it.
Darren, one last with that, one of the key things, like how Mike really helped me, is that we were really tied really close to the hip. I trusted him so much as the guy making the tech and building it, and he trusted me so much from the sales side. Now, hey, we want to do this thing. How is it going to actually interact in the boardroom? How are people going to perceive it at the kitchen table? Is it going to help them make decision, or is it just a spinny, cool thing that the tech guy goes, that looks cool, but nobody cares, and it cost you all this money and it didn't do anything? So we made it a point to have all people come in, even on Mike's team, tech team, go on sales ride-alongs.
Yeah.
Learn the business. Like, what are we building? Do you see different gaps and challenges in place? And we had some of the folks, the tech guys in the back, just building software, come up with fantastic ideas. Like, oh my gosh, that's brilliant. And so that it enables that type of a relationship. And most folks have these walls between them. And I'm saying, you're doing a disservice to being like you're saying, a servant in your community to really help people make decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. And that ride along concept is such an important thing, because there's so many silos that are built up in organizations, and we can't have a technical guy come along and ride along with a salesperson, because what's the point? Customer's not going to know why he's there or why she's there, so don't do it. But what we're saying is, no, do that, because it enables you to have some more customized software or services or approach that's going to ultimately help that customer. Right. As we wrap, there's a one question then on the top of my mind around AI, and I love your take on this. There might be people listening to this and thinking, "Oh my God, I'm really afraid of AI." The work that you guys are doing, do you see that the AI, the platform, the software that you're building, will enhance and enable the people side of it, or will it eventually replace people? So what I'm saying there is, are we in the future going to need a sales manager if the software can do it? Are we going to need a technical person if the software is going to do it? How do you see AI evolving in the sales realm? And is it going to be here to enhance what we do, to provide a better experience, or are there some things we should be concerned about?
Good question. So I think I mean, it depends on the organization and how people go about using new tools, but it absolutely can be an enabler. Like, so you think about a salesperson that comes into training, I don't, who knows what their background is, who knows what kind of money they make, but let's just say we want all our salespeople to be successful. And in the world of strategic sales, that means you got to learn a bunch of stuff. You got to get good at quite a bit of topics, products, and sales, jargon, and handling objections and all that kind of stuff. And Gen AI tech can absolutely get you up those learning curves faster. Just drilling a drill with a hand drill or a power drill, right? At some point, power drills were introduced, and it didn't replace people that drilled holes in the field, but people that didn't use power drills got replaced by by people that would only use hand drills, right? So I think it's a similar thing. So, like, in our world, if you're leveraging some sort of Gen AI copilot, it doesn't have to be ours, like some sort of Gen AI copilot that says, how am I going to get good at selling, selling this software product to a business leader in the org? How am I going to get good at selling tools in people's backyards? It's by rapidly getting good at delivering all the information I need to deliver and not making mistakes as often. And so, like, a Gen AI copilot can be capturing all that stuff, can give you feedback. You don't have to make it interruptive. You don't have to degrade the in-person experience, but you can make it so immediately after, just like a great sales leader was doing a ride-along, can reinforce the stuff that you did right and immediately remind you of the thing. Hey, you didn't deliver the referral script the way it was supposed to be delivered. Hey, the customer brought up this, but you forgot to bring up that. Like, Gen AI tools can do that today. That's like, that is one of the use cases that's actually good right now. Like, Gen AI can't help in-person strategic sales, like, magically tell you the exact right thing to say when you're with somebody. Like, we're nowhere near there.
Yeah.
But what it can do is replicate a lot of coaching that you wouldn't get because there's only so many hours in the day. So there's a bunch of use cases. So, like, it literally can help a sales rep, like, do a better job with the customer and make more money and all that kind of stuff, right? It absolutely enables them. And it really lets the human do what the human does best. One of the cool things about strategic sales is there's a real human to human interaction, or at least in a lot of sales teams, a lot of organizations. And I did work in neuroscience for a little while, but I don't know when it's going to be that something is better than a human at reading another human in real time.
Yeah.
And, like, I can be talking to you. Actually, I'm not the best example because I'll talk too much, but you take somebody, a normal off the street, average intelligence, average emotional intelligence. Hey, remember these scripts. Remember how to walk through this application in this straightforward way. And remember to ask these questions and then pay attention. Right. And by giving them that information ahead of time, their mind is more free to pay attention to the person they're interacting with. And that is what we are bioengineered to do, is to talk to somebody in real time and say something, and then some muscle contracts in their forehead, and then they say it a little different. Oh, I realized I probably could have said that a different way. And, like, you really free the human to have, like, these genuine experience. Anyway, so I know that was very wordy, Darren. Sorry, but I believe it's absolute enabler.
So it won't replace people necessarily. That's cool.
Great. Not anytime soon. I mean, maybe, in the future, who knows?
Yeah, maybe.
It might be your robot selling to my robot, and we're both drinking Mai Tais at the beach. I don't know.
I believe that we're going to see it's going to have a great impact on ethical selling. Incredible impact there. And it's funny, I struggled with that question myself early on, Darren. And so it was a part of why I really wanted to partner again with Mike, is that, so if I have the opportunity now to influence AI, so that's why, so I want to get the ethical way of doing it right, communicating what should be done, what should it be looking for, how should it communicate in a way that's ethical and comes across with aloha. And that will enable, I think it's actually going to enable managers to be so much more effective at their craft. Really will. because they're not going to be sifting through all this vague information. They can go straight to the data point because it's a mystery right now what happens at any kitchen table or any boardroom. Nobody knows what happens in there. Once that sales rep leaves that room, nobody knows. Well, now we're going to have an understanding of what happens, and it's just going to make people better.
Yeah.
And that's so I'm looking forward to that side of it. So we're going to be on the good side of this thing.
Love it. Love it. And selling with aloha. What a great way to finish. So guys, been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. Can't wait for the book to come out, and I'll certainly be watching with interest in terms of how pattern intelligence gets expanded and takes over and global domination, which is awesome. So for people listening to this who'd like to connect with you, learn a little bit more about what you guys do, and certainly get hold of the book when it comes out in September, where is the best place for them to get access to you and connect?
For the book, there's a URL, salessucksbook.com. That'll take them to like the right URL on our website. And my email address is mike@salespatter.io if anybody wants to reach out to me. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Patter AI.
Awesome. And Greg?
Yeah, yeah, so the same thing. My name it's Gregg@salespatter.io as well. So yeah, reach out if you have any questions. We'd love to help any way we can.
Awesome. Guys, enjoy the rest of your Monday afternoon. It's still nice and sunny there by what I can see through the light coming through the windows. And thanks again for being a guest on the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast.
Darren, thank you very much for having us on the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast. I trust the information in this episode has been helpful in your journey towards becoming exceptional. And remember, please take the time to rate the show, subscribe to the show so other people can find it. But also, if I can help you, jump on my calendar, go to leadwithdarren.com, and let's have a conversation about how I can help you along your journey to being exceptional.